Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As a senior, a required course that must be taken is economics. Okay. However, economics is one of those courses that you don't really build up along high school. It's not like math where it is cumulative, right? Economics is just kind of a course that you only refer to it in 12th grade. So we don't have anything to lean on, any prior knowledge. And this is a reason why many get stumped about economics. And a really key topic about economics that kids often don't get is about supply and demand. And I will be explaining this today. First, we must consider why they are important. Well, in our daily lives, we go visit the grocery store, right? And we go buy things. And based on the price, we determine how much we buy and when we buy. But not only price affects this, right? Our income, if we just got a new paycheck or bonus, or did we get a pay cut, this determines how much and when we buy. And also, we must consider taste and preferences, or what is the new hot item, right? Like ripped jeans. If ripped jeans is considered the new hot item, more people are willing to buy ripped jeans. So that will change demand. But we also must consider the supply side of it, right? Why do we find more of one item while less of one item, right? Another item. And why are items put on clearance, right? These are all answered by supply and demand. So let's get started with demand. Before I delve into demand, there's something I need to first define, and it's ceteris paribus. And it's a concept, an economic concept. All other things equal assumption. And this means that we are not considering outside factors. We are looking at a very simplified version. And this is according to the Economic Times. Ceteris paribus is a very closed off situation. We don't look at other factors, because if we did, it would become much more complicated to the point we couldn't understand it. So we're looking at a very simplified model, but at the same time, these concepts can be applied to the real world. Okay, so let's first define demand. Well, what do I mean when I say demand? I'm referring to the amount of goods consumers are willing to buy at a certain price. And this is according to Krugman's economics. Scratch that. Apologize. What I meant to say, Krugman's economics talks about the law of demand. And let me define the law of demand. According to Krugman, law of demand is when price goes up, quantity demanded goes down. When price goes down, quantity demanded goes up. Okay? So this is why we get an inverse relationship between price and quantity. Price is on the y-axis, quantity is on the x-axis, okay? And we have an inverse relationship. Now, there's a reason the demand curve does have this shape, okay? And there are three big reasons. And those reasons are the substitution effect, the income effect, and the law of margining diminishing utility. Now we'll get to the substitution and income effect because I'll get to that later. But the law of diminishing marginal utility basically says that after a while, if you keep getting the same good, there won't be a demand for more goods. And what I mean by that, a good example is there are more people that are likely to get just 2 gallons of milk rather than 5 gallons of milk, right? Because after a while, you'll be drinking a lot of milk and you'll be like, I don't want any milk anymore, right? The milk loses its value once you have so much of it. So you start demanding less. So the change in price for the law of demand will change the quantity demanded. This will shift a certain point along a demand curve. It's a shift along the demand curve. Because as price goes down, quantity goes up like this. But when price goes up, quantity goes down like this. But there are other things that will change the curve. I mean, you're asking, why do I have another curve here? That's because the whole demand curve can shift. But there are different reasons. And these reasons, there are 6 big reasons. And a good acronym to remember them by is INSECT. Okay. I stands for income. Change in income. If you have more income, you're more willing to spend on something, right? So the demand curve will shift. There's also N for number of buyers, because there is competition between buyers. It's not as comical as they make it for, when you're buying Christmas shopping. It's not as comical as they do in those videos where people are shoving each other, right? But there is competition between buyers, and that does determine demand. E, it stands for expectation, consumer expectation. If you think that the prices of oil will rise, or price of gas for your car, right, it will rise, then you're more likely to buy it now than later. There's also C for complement, or I think I missed S. Yes. S is for substitutes. And I mentioned the substitution effect. So let me first define what a substitute is. So a good example is butter and margarine. They're practically the same value of a good. I mean, butter is just as valuable as margarine, but depending on the price of one, the demand for other will change. For instance, if the price of margarine goes down, then the demand for butter will go up. It will go down. Sorry, because it's cheaper to buy margarine, so more people will buy margarine, while less people will buy butter. C stands for complements, and those are goods that you buy together. For example, milk and cookies. You buy them together, right? Or peanut butter and jelly. So if the price of one goes up, generally the demand for the other will go down because it's expensive to buy both of them together. T stands for tastes and preferences. So, like I said, ripped jeans being a hot item, that will increase the demand for ripped jeans, right? And you have personal tastes and preferences that will increase demand for a certain good over another. So these will shift the demand curve. Now, which direction, you say? I mean, you can go this way, but you can go that way too. So a good way to remember is left is less, right is more. So if the demand increases, you shift right. If the demand decreases, you shift left. There's also a good question asked by many economic students. This concept is often missed. The question will ask if price shifts the curve, if price will shift the curve. Price of that certain good you are talking about will not shift the curve. If the price of substitutes or complements change, then the curve can shift. But if the price of that specific good you're talking about changes, it will not shift the curve. You will stay along the curve. Remember, it shifts along the curve, not outwards, right? It does not shift. You move along the curve. So that's a very important concept. Do not mistake that. Okay, so I'm pretty sure I described everything for demand. Let's move on to supply. So let's first define supply. Well, it's how much a producer is willing to supply of a good at a certain price. And there's also a law of supplies. There is a law of demand. And as said by Khan Academy, supply and demand, the law of supply says that when price goes up, the quantity supplied also goes up. When price goes down, the quantity supplied also goes down. This is the reason why this is upward sloping. It's the opposite of the law of demand, and that's important to keep in mind. Again, you're graphing quantity versus price, right? So that does not change. There's also, price will move along the curve, will shift along the curve, while there are other factors that actually shift the curve outwards, right? Those factors are not exactly the same as here for demand. A good acronym to remember for supply is GETS TIPS. G stands for government regulations. Government does put regulations on businesses, and this does change how much is supplied, right? Another thing is E for expectation. Seller expectations, not consumer expectations, right? Another one is T stands for taxes. If you are taxed for producing a good, chances are you're gonna not produce as much. And to really understand supply, you should put yourself in a producer, in a business owner's mindset, right? If you get taxed for a certain good, chances are you're not gonna sell as much. S stands for subsidies. And that's when government gives you money to produce goods. So usually it shifts rightwards, but if the government takes away the subsidies, then it would shift leftwards. Again, left is less, just as in the demand curve, right is more. S, subsidies, yeah. T is for technology. Technology is almost always, I can't think of a case when it doesn't move to the right. It moves to the right because if your technology gets better, you're going to produce more if it's more efficient, right? And that makes sense. I stands for input cost. How much does it cost for you to produce that item? For instance, if you were having a lemonade stand, sale, right? It costs you to make that lemonade. It costs you money, right? It costs you money to get the pitchers, to put the stand together, right? And so the price that it took to get all that that's your input cost. And the higher the input cost, chances are you're going to supply less. So it will shift to the left. But if the input cost is less, then you would supply more. So shift to the right. P stands for productivity. And when I refer to productivity, I'm really talking about, are your employees happy? And if they're happy, chances are you can supply more. But if they're not happy and they go on strike, then chances are you can supply less because they don't come to work. And that's not good. So, let me think. S, the last S, that's like number of sellers. Because competition between different companies ultimately will change how much is supplied. If a company goes out of business, right, that can change how much is supplied. If there are more companies added, that changes how much is supplied. So those are the factors that will actually shift the curve to the right or the left. Okay? Again, I will reiterate, just as in demand, price does not shift your curve to the right or left. You move along the curve, right? If price decreases, your quantity supplied decreases. Price increases, your quantity supplied increases. So just keep that in mind. Price will not shift your curve. That is a very oftenly missed question because it's a conceptual, it's a misconception, okay? So yeah, I think that actually covers everything I wanted to teach you today. So I hope that you understand demand and supply better now, okay? If you still have confusion about it, you're like, what is ceteris paribus again? Or I don't really understand the law of demand, or I don't understand this idea that price doesn't shift it. You can go back and rewind. That's the benefit of modern technology. I hope I explained briefly. This is a brief overview again. If you have no experience at all with economics, then you should probably go to other videos because you want to have some basis. But if you do have some basis but you were confused, I hope this video was helpful. Demand and supply are seen, you see these concepts in everyday life, so I hope I taught you also that even though this is simplified version because of ceteris paribus, it is applicable to real life and it does interconnect with everything we do. Alright, thank you very much.